It was Doc who was shouting in the woods, and he hadn't seen Roberta or the others since his 5-minute trip to the loo.
It's me, Doc! Oh, come on, guys!
After shouting for a long time without any response, there was only one explanation: he had gotten separated from the main group. Those guys probably hadn't even noticed that one person was missing from their team. While Doc was complaining, it seemed a white shadow flashed by.
Elvis?
He's still standing.
Hit him again. Harder.
The unlucky Doc was hit twice before he passed out. When Doc woke up again, he was greeted by a group of strangely dressed people, and his hands were tied with white clothes. The man who attacked him, dressed like Elvis, was smirking wickedly.
Welcome to the Serenity Falls Institution for the criminally insane.
Yes, Doc had been brought to a criminal psychiatric hospital located in the suburbs, with a few zombies wandering around. The woman dressed as a nurse, named Ratched, was in charge. Ratched told Doc that this psychiatric hospital was established in 1905 and had always been operated and self-sustained by the patients, even surviving through the apocalypse without completely shutting down. Doc wasn't interested in knowing this. He urgently asked why he had been brought here. Ratched, with a smile, said, "We went to the forest to pick mushrooms this morning, and suddenly we heard you loudly claiming you were a doctor, so we brought you here. Now, let me confirm again if you really are a doctor." Doc was initially baffled, then remembered shouting that he was Doc in the morning, which these people misinterpreted as him claiming to be a doctor. Now, faced with Ratched's verification, he dared not deny it, fearing they might consider him valueless with unpredictable consequences. So, Doc decided to play along, boasting that he was not only a clinical psychologist but also a pharmacology expert. But before Doc could finish, a man in purple attire loudly protested that Doc was a spy sent by the government. How could he possibly be a doctor, unless he could prove himself? Ratched thought it made sense. You claim to be a psychology expert, right? If you can diagnose the conditions of the patients here, then you'll be recognized as a real doctor, and you won't have to wear the patient's clothes anymore. Doc sighed with apprehension, now only hoping to bluff his way through, turning his first gaze to Liddy, who was the most agitated just now.
Paranoid delusional.
Correct.
Fortunately, Doc guessed correctly. Liddy claimed he was a spy upon their first meeting, so Doc surmised that Liddy suffered from paranoid delusions. Ratched then prompted Doc to observe another patient.
Oh, that one's tough. Can you give me a hint?
This man didn't speak a word and kept spinning in circles. Ratched hinted that Mr. Bob had experienced the pain of separation from his wife and had social anxiety issues. Well, that wasn't hard to guess, was it? Doc immediately diagnosed him with depression. For the person in front of him dressed up like Elvis, isn't he just suffering from delusions? Then there was the girl who pretended to hug him but actually stole his cherished anesthetics. Doc diagnosed Winona as suffering from kleptomania, the one constantly arranging chairs but never sitting down. Must have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Ratched nodded in approval. Doc really had some skills.
Hey, man. Did you ever stop to think that maybe your chair's the only one that's straight and everybody else's is crooked?
That's what I've been saying all along.
With a single sentence, Doc got Ree to sit down, shocking Ratched. It seemed Doc was not only a doctor but also an experienced expert. From then on, no one doubted Doc's identity, and he was immediately freed from the bindings of the patient's clothes. Ratched says there's a new patient here with a condition so unusual he simply can't be around others. Now is the perfect time for Doc, the professional doctor, to give him a treatment. On the way there, Ratched made a point to describe the patient's unusual symptoms, clearly mentally unstable and mostly in a dazed state, as if lost in hallucinations. Although he occasionally comes to consciousness, he's always muttering to himself about blue-skinned people and missions on Zona Planet. Upon hearing this, Doc was taken aback. Wasn't this information known only to their Team X? He hurriedly opened the door and looked at the patient's face. To his shock, it was 10K.
10K, you're alive!
10K, you know this patient?
No, not 10K as in a name, 10K as a diagnosis.
Doc wasn't foolish. For safety's sake, he couldn't let on that he recognized 10K.
Never heard of 10K fever?
That's a relatively new diagnosis. It just came out in the DSM-5.
But he doesn't have a fever.
That is exactly why it's so hard to diagnose. Tell me, have you noticed the patient counting at all?
Yes. When he first came in, he kept rattling off strange numbers.
10K fever, all right.
Doc spouted all sorts of nonsense with a straight face, impressing Ratched with his professionalism. Once Ratched left, Doc quickly checked 10K's body. 10K looked merely exhausted, with no signs of zombie bites, which eased Doc's worries. Doc gave 10K a big hug, as they hadn't seen each other for a long time, but at that moment, 10K started hallucinating again, mistaking Doc for Red and spouting all sorts of nonsense. He mentioned Murphy blends, 5K, and talk of finding Roberta to attack the Blends Kingdom. It was then Doc realized 10K was indeed in trouble. He hurried outside to ask Ratched how they found the boy. Ratched said they initially thought he was just a drug addict because he had this concoction on him, which looked like some homemade drug. Such a sad figure to be addicted to such substances. Doc wanted to study it, but Ratched wouldn't give him the chance. Doc suggested a thorough examination of 10K to find a cure, but Ratched said there wasn't enough time to waste. Worrying about the possibility of contagion, she planned to use her own surgical method to save the patient. That is, cerebral protein removal. Doc paused to think. Cerebral protein removal? That's lobotomy. Ratched assured him she was very experienced, although there might be some side effects, but nothing too serious. Ratched also mentioned that Bob, when he first arrived, had a condition similar to 10K's and was nearly beyond help. It was also through cerebral protein removal that his life was saved. Doc inwardly scoffed, recalling a statement Ratched had made before.
Serenity Falls has been patient-run and self-sufficient since its founding in 1905.
So, according to that, could it be that Ratched herself is a mental patient who enjoys performing craniotomies on others? That's rather unsettling. Ratched mentioned the side effects might leave someone in a dazed, foolish state like Bob. Then came time for medication distribution. Ratched had already prepared the doses, and everyone just needed to collect theirs. Doc noticed the medicines seemed to be just nuts. Ratched told him to keep it down. Although the patients were all mentally unstable, they knew these weren't real medicines. It was more about a placebo effect, hoping for a better future. Then, Winona came running, shouting that the boy with 10K's disease was foaming at the mouth and convulsing. Doc, anxious, rushed to the room.
Real medication! Are you telling me that an institution of this size, with only a half a dozen patients in it, has absolutely no medication at all?
Ratched hurriedly explained that the pharmacy was well stocked, but it had been taken over by mentally ill patients turned zombies. With no other choice for 10K's quick recovery, Doc had to bravely venture out. Elvis volunteered to help. Ready to face the challenge together, they reached the hallway, its sides splattered with blood. As they walked, a bound zombie charged at them, which Elvis easily dispatched with his guitar. They also encountered a zombie wearing an electric machine on its head. Doc effortlessly took care of it by plugging the wires into a lamp. Then, they smoothly entered the storage room, which was filled with more medicine than they could imagine. Meanwhile, outside, 10K suddenly started foaming at the mouth and convulsing. Just as Winona passed by, concerned the condition might be contagious, she quickly rushed towards the pharmacy to inform Ratched of the situation. Ratched made a snap decision to proceed with surgery right away. Unable to wait for them to bring back the medicine, Ratched instructed Rita to wait here and press the main door switch if they returned. Then she left, but with so many buttons on the panel, could this mental patient really find the right one? Ratched acted swiftly, gathering personnel to take 10K into the surgery room, and had Bob stand guard at the door to keep out any unauthorized individuals. Winona hadn't expected that simply reporting 10K's condition would lead Ratched to decide on performing a lobotomy right away. Winona could only knock at the hallway door, hoping Dr. Doc would hear and come out to stop it. Fortunately, Winona's efforts paid off, and Elvis noticed. He peeked out to check.
I wonder what's got her all shook up. Hey, Doc, we better shake, rattle, and roll.
In the surgery room, Ratched had already prepared the tools for the craniotomy, planning to use a small hammer and chisel, while 10K, delirious, had no awareness to resist. Meanwhile, Doc and Elvis had already retrieved the medicines and were coming out. Winona asked Rita to prepare to open the door. However, opening this door required pressing 3 buttons in sequence, a difficult task for the elderly mental patient. With Doc's urging, Rita kept pressing the wrong buttons, having to reset and start over again and again. To make matters worse, zombies broke through another door in the hallway, and 7 or 8 of them started approaching.
3, 1.
Repeat, hurry up!
I told you. you. Don't call me that!
2 minutes passed, and Ree was still attempting to reset. The first zombie was nearly upon them when Elvis stylishly took it down with a sweeping leg kick, then finished it off. They hadn't even had time to celebrate when the rest of the zombie horde was already less than 3 meters away. In the urgent situation, as they prepared for a desperate fight, Ree finally got the door open, seeing Doc come out. Winona quickly explained that 10K had been taken to the surgery room. Upon hearing this, Doc immediately rushed out in anxiety. Meanwhile, Ratchet was already prepared to start, seemingly excited about the procedure.
This might sting a little.